to them. There are movements afoot to bring a case against Iranian leaders in the International Criminal Court, as I've mentioned. Efforts are underway to try to persuade several nations that are signatories to the Rome Treaty to file charges, including incitement to genocide and the murder of dissidents. If this were to happen, the witnesses who currently reside in Camp Ashraf would secure the additional status of protected witnesses, and the prestige of the International Criminal Court might weigh heavily in favor of assuring that they were not harmed by Iranian killers assigned to keep them from giving relevant testimony. I intend to communicate directly to the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court and urge him to grant witness-protected status to the potential witnesses who today are in that camp. It is an international crime to tamper with witnesses or to murder witnesses. That's what the mafia does. It's not what civilized societies do. In any event, these 3,400 enemies of Iranian tyranny deserve protection on humanitarian grounds. The actions of the Iranian government and those in Iraq who are toadying up to the mullahs make it clear that these dissidents are potential targets of Iranian mischief. The United States government, which was responsible for disarming them, has the concomitant responsibility to protect them. We've heard from so many now about the impending visit of the Iraqi leader to the presidency of the United States. That was an interesting Freudian slip. If the President of the United States does not demand a change in the Iraqi government's commitment to close the camp, his silence will be taken as acquiescence. And that is so dangerous, silent acquiescence. One excuse, as we all know, offered by those who would not protect the inmates is that they are members of the MEK, which was once, a decade and a half ago, designated, mistakenly in my view, by our government as a terrorist group. This was the first, quote, legal point listed by the Iraqi government in its recent paper to the European communities. Quote, the organization has already been classified by the international community as a terrorist organization. The paper also refers to relations with neighboring countries, which of course means Iran, which is truly a terrorist nation and so regarded by all reasonable people. Now, there are several legal, moral, and practical reasons why this excuse of the MEK being listed just doesn't work. First of all, even if it were true, and it's not, that the MEK is a terrorist group, that designation would not deny the residents of Camp Ashraf protection under international law. Certainly not all the residents, if any, can currently be deemed terrorists. They are disarmed. They are not engaged in any activities which meet any legal definition of terrorism. None of them are combatants under international law, either lawful or unlawful combatants. Secondly, the designation of MEK as a terrorist group has always been highly questionable and is more so today. Even if an organization has once been deemed a terrorist group, it does not mean that it retains that status forever. The law is clear. The status must be repeatedly revisited, and there is no current evidence that would justify continuing in the status of a terrorist group. When the former head of the FBI and the former Secretary of Homeland Security, who have seen documents that none of us have available to us, can certify that there is no current threat from this organization, that ought to cover an enormous amount of ground and ought to carry an enormous amount of weight. And the President of the United States and the Secretary of State must consider the current evidence and must delist this organization. In any event, the 1,000 women, the many children, the elderly, and the others who are among the 3,400 residents of Camp Ashraf are entitled to protection, regardless of this anachronistic and false designation still accorded to the MEK. Even the Iraqi government seems to concede this point in theory, claiming to be dealing with the camp residents, quote, in accordance with the human rights principles of international law enshrined